I'm on a post-awesome movie high right now. I had such a good time with Alien Romulus. I couldn't make the press screening because I had a personal conflict. So I was annoyed that I couldn't make the embargo, and that's why my review is late. So I rushed out to see the first screening when it hit theaters today. I had such a good time. My expectations were low, but I don't think that had anything to do with it, because the movie, it's not like, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. It's genuinely a really good movie. I had such a good time watching this movie. I was in my big cushy recliner at the theater. I opted for nachos today, and I had my fizzy water, trying to cut down on sugar again. But I was just having such a good time. It was just so nice. My theater wasn't too crowded, which makes me a little nervous about the movie's performance, because the trailers were bad. I hope word of mouth is like fire, because it deserves to be. But it made for a nice experience because it was very cozy. There were just enough people for you to feel like you weren't watching the movie by yourself. And everybody took it very seriously. There were only the fans there. Everybody was quiet. Nobody interrupted the movie, which I really appreciated. A lot of single moviegoers. I think that's one of the nice things about AMC A-List. That's like, also I think it was an early in the day showing. As many of you know, the matinee, an excellent time to go to the movies because there's less shenanigans, especially during a weekday. But it was just so good. I hope you have as good a time watching this movie as I did. Now, this is the non-spoiler review. Not only because there should always be a non-spoiler review for a movie like this, but like a lot of, big movies, there's cool stuff in here. I hope nobody ruins for you. I take it very seriously. Sometimes you guys are like, there was a spoiler in there. Although sometimes you guys make assumptions about what I'm saying. But I've again worked very hard not to give anything away because there's so much great stuff in here. So many, not only great twists and turns, but clever ones as well. And not just callbacks to the Alien movies. That's, of course, a big part of the film. But it's a genuinely good movie in its own right, which we're going to discuss. And yes, that third act is knucking foots. I saw a lot of people talking about the third act when the review embargo lifted yesterday. People are like, what's with that third act, man? I know it's been spoiled for some of you, which I feel awful. Because, when I was watching the movie, I was like, are you really going to do that? And they did. I didn't like the way they did it, but that didn't mean it wasn't a good idea. So yes, I'll just explain the third act to you. Don't worry, I'm not going to give it away. And I hope no one ruins this for you. Now, it's not B-level horror. It's a C-level horror third act. You're like, what happened? And Fede Alvarez, that guy just can't help falling back on the, let's say, fetish that has made him famous or infamous in horror circles. Ew, dude. Ew. But the visuals remain so strong in the third act. I mean, it's still gorgeous. And it's such a good idea, even though, again, I don't like how it's executed. And it opens up such an interesting path forward for the franchise that I will allow it. It did not ruin the movie for me. In fact, even though, again, I thought it was not particularly well done and I had a lot of problems with it, it was frustrating. Business, even my creative side was like, oh, you're so close, Fede. You're so close. Where's my red pen? Let me just help you. You're so close to this being genius. But it wasn't. But it got me excited for what they could do next. I was like, oh, let's give this great idea. Although that's not fair to Fede Alvarez. Let's just give him some notes because he directed the heck out of this movie. I never would have guessed he had it in him based on his previous work. I'm like, wow, where's this been, Fede? And he's like, I dug deep. And you're like, excellent, Fede. By the way, one of the things that made me really like this movie is that I sure do love me a synthetic. Ooh, and that's not a spoiler. Andy is identified as a synthetic immediately. And come on, if you know anything about the Alien franchise, if you see a neat and clean human, the neater and cleaner they are, the less likely they're actually human. Sigourney Weaver lucked out because synthetics weren't a huge part of the franchise for the first two movies. They were key. I'm sure some of you are like, well, actually, Grace. No, they were important to the film for sure and still very cool. But with Winona Ryder and then, of course, Michael Fassbender. David, I love you. Let's just say that at this point, the Alien franchise has become as much about synthetics as it has about facehuggers and xenomorphs. And I ain't complaining. I just love synthetics so much. We're going to talk about them again in a minute. But anyway, now, some of you have been asking me, I tweeted about this as soon as the movie was over, and some of you were like, how many other Alien movies must I have watched to enjoy this, Grace? Well, I don't think you have to really watch any of them. You can have a good time. I hope you go to see this movie and discover the Alien franchise. Please don't watch 3 and 4. Yeah. Some people, maybe I should revisit 3. Some of you tell me I should revisit it. But you know, in the best 2 are the first 2. But you know, I think Ridley Scott's prequels have, you know, you got to see it for Michael Fassbender's performance alone. But I think you'll still enjoy this film if you've never seen an Alien film previously. But if you have, you'll have a much better time because you're like, oh, they did the thing. Oh, that's a reference to that. I know what a science officer is. Oh, it's great. Now, if you really, like, I think if you're like pressed for time, you could see the first 2 Alien movies, right? Because like I think that would make you, like from a fun perspective, that would make you appreciate the film the most because there are callbacks. Even though this takes place after only the first Alien, it has lots of callbacks to Aliens, directed by Mr. James Cameron. Thank you very much. And to Alien Romulus's credit, I would say it's almost as good as those two movies. I think the third act brings it a smidge below because you're like, Fede, at the last minute, you blinked. But it's still very, very good. I definitely think it's in league with those first 2 movies, which is an incredible accomplishment. Now, however, from a story perspective, if you're like, Grace, I'd like to understand everything. If you want to get your Winston on and you want to understand everything that happens in the movie, well, then you would need to watch Prometheus, maybe Alien Covenant, but you need to watch Prometheus and the first Alien movie because those are the films that take place prior to Alien Romulus to get the full effect. Especially if you're like, Grace, I don't have that much time, just watch the first Alien. If you watch the first Alien, that will be enough for you to know what's going on when you watch this film. And if you haven't seen the original Alien by now, why haven't you not seen it? It's one of the greatest movies ever made. So do yourself a favor and watch the first Alien movie. All right, now, I think there are some people who are like, I don't like older decades of filmmaking because I don't, you don't like the aesthetic and stuff like that. Get into it, man. Appreciate the art. All right, now, I've seen a couple of criticisms that the film is nothing but callbacks. Nothing but callbacks. It's just callback city. And I don't think that's true. But it does have a lot of callbacks. But I think that benefits the film. And in fact, I would compare it to Jurassic World because both films are extremely reverential of the most popular films in their franchise. It's not like Superman Returns where you're like, dude, get over it. You can't go back to the original Superman movie. It's not like that. But I think Jurassic World is the appropriate comparison because it's reverential and it's therefore sort of refocuses the franchise and gets it back on track by taking off from the strongest film, right? In a new direction. But it also has enough of its own ideas and it's so strong visually that it exists in its own right as well. It takes you back to what you've been missing about the franchise, but also bringing in the modern elements that you expect from a current film. That's how I would describe Alien Romulus. I really do feel it's the Jurassic World of this franchise. And some of you might be like, I didn't like Jurassic World. It's not good, Grace. What are you talking about? Made $1 billion. Alien Romulus would be only so lucky to be the Jurassic World of this franchise. And it did bring the franchise back on track. All right, so now let's go back to synthetics because I love them so much. All right. I think that's one of the reasons I liked this movie so much as well, because it focuses on a synthetic. And I love them not just in the world of Alien, but also, of course, Blade Runner, both franchises from Ridley Scott. Now, Scott has long teased that the two franchises are connected. It's not official, but it might as well be. All right? And both deal extensively with artificial intelligent humans. A conversation which is quickly becoming more real for us every day. I watched Terminator 2 again the other night, having a great week. And I was like, it hit different because you were like, I'm witnessing the birth of Skynet as we speak. What the heck? This movie didn't warn anybody. And there's nothing we can do about it. So, you might have a synthetic somewhere in the near future. And also, of course, Ridley Scott's I'm a big fan of Blade Runner. I like the first film. And also, although the second film had some cool visuals, it was, it's not a great movie, but I wouldn't just totally throw it away, especially that Vegas sequence. I'll forever love the film for that alone. Well, not love it, but respect it. As well as Ridley Scott's Raised by Wolves series that ran for 2 seasons on Max. So good. Kind of fell apart at the end, but it was still incredible. And that also featured extensively artificial humans. In fact, Romulus' Andy is surely inspired by Father from Raised by Wolves, as both characters are similarly sympathetic and just all around fabulous. I love these guys. I can't wait to talk to you about Andy in the spoiler review. And all I'll say here is I hope that a star has been born in David Jonsson, because he just knocks this out of the park. Now, I know some of you watch Industry, because some of you are like, Grace, do you watch Industry? And I'm like, no, I don't. It keeps getting renewed, though, so somebody's watching it, and he's from that show. But this is the first time that I've ever seen David Jonsson, and I'm an instant fan. I was worried about Alien Romulus just seeming like a teen slasher flick that had been jammed into the Alien franchise, like a teen slasher in alien clothing only. But I think that Jonsson gives the film the gravitas and heart that elevate it to the level of the franchise. His character is so good. The twists and turns of Andy's story here are quite impressive and intriguing. And I think he might be up there with my two favorite other synthetics, David and Father. And in some ways, he's actually a mix of the two, which is maybe why I like him so much. You'd think, you might be like, what other story can we possibly tell about these characters? Synthetics. And they found such an interesting one here. I really loved it. I loved it so much. I'm going to see this movie again. I just really liked it. The rest of the cast, well, let's just say they don't have a ton of screen time. And I was fine with that. I mean, they're fine. I'm a fan of Archie Renault from Shadow and Bone. Isabella Merced, this is actually one of the best performances I've seen her do. But, it's fine. Kaylee Spaney, though, is supposed to be the female lead. And she is certainly a talented actress. I liked her the most in the Craft sequel. And I found her underwhelming in Civil War, I have to say. I didn't see her in Priscilla, although I know some of you really liked her in that. Here, she's fine. She doesn't hurt the movie. She's fine. But she doesn't have Sigourney Weaver's serious quirkiness to help her compete with Jonsson or everything else that's going on around her. She often kind of fades away. I think Alvarez wanted a softer look for his female lead. And interestingly, he always goes for a softer look, even for Lisbeth Salander. And I think that, he goes for a soft look on his leading ladies, even when it doesn't work. I wonder why nobody ever says anything to him. Because in Alien, I think the leading ladies have to have more edge. It's too bad that Anya Taylor-Joy already signed up for Furiosa, because this would have been a better fit for her. Or, do the work and find a new actress. Sigourney Weaver was like a discovery for this. The first Alien was her breakout movie. Although, the more I think about it, I don't know if an edgier actress would have worked with Andy. I think you needed that soft female lead to better play off of the dynamic of Andy, which, we can't discuss because you'll have to see it in this, you have to see the movie. I don't want to spoil it. Because Andy is the real star of the movie. And that's interesting to go from a series that had a female lead as the hallmark to now, I think, with David and now Andy and Father to some degree, a male synthetic. Although Mother was pretty awesome as well. All right, let's talk about that incredible world building. As the movie started, I couldn't believe they'd ever planned to send this movie straight to Hulu because it is so cinematic. You're like, whoa. And like the creator, I can't believe it. Both these movies were made for just $80 million. Aw, man, clearly most of the additional money in these huge budgets goes to paying big name talent and or endless reshoots. So they have to keep redoing the film. I don't know if big name talent is needed or not. Let's see how the creator cratered at the box office, so we'll see how Alien Romulus does. Maybe it needed like one big name. The first Alien had, Tom Skerritt and John Hurd in it, so it had some names. This one has like nobody that anybody would know of. So maybe they could have paid. Maybe movie could have cost 90 to 100, and they could have gotten somebody. But let's see how it performs at the box office. But just from a like the filmmaking perspective, not taking the business element out of it, the creator and Alien Romulus look incredible. Alien Romulus looks even better. This movie looks so good. And to Alvarez's credit, while his trashy horror background kicks in with the third act, you're like, what? How'd the National Enquirer get in here? But for the first two acts, it's a very strong high-end piece of filmmaking. It's really, really strong. The shots are just gorgeous. And the composition is striking. I love what you did here, Fede. And fantastic, clever visual story points that unfold before you. I love, I always tell you, the rule of filmmaking is show, don't tell. And there's a whole lot of show here. I loved it. And some tell, too. Very good. Surprisingly strong script for the type of movie it is. Based on the trailers, you'd never think this movie was this strong across the board. I was just continually impressed as the movie unfolded. And I think the Jurassic franchise comparison is excellent, in fact, in many ways. Some we'll discuss in the spoiler review because I don't want to give it away. But I will say here that it also felt a little theme parky at points, and how they had to navigate the Romulus space station while avoiding the aliens, right? We have to get from point A to B and then C, and we have to do these tasks while we do it. A little video game-like, too. It really made me miss the great movie ride, too. It felt a little ride-like, which I thought was great. In the original Alien movie and most of its sequels, the character, I thought, and that's not true. In the prequels, in Prometheus and Alien Covenant, those felt bigger, but they felt drier. This has the fun factor. This brings the fun factor back. And I think that they were able to, because of advancements in technology, open up the spaces more. So you were still in the space station, but they had bigger spaces to operate in. And I think they have a lot of really fantastic complex visual sequences. A little Die Hard at points too. It was a little Die Hardy, I thought. And some very inventive kills, which we'll talk about in the spoiler review. I will say that there are some things you're like, I can't believe it took so long since the first film, considering it's using some of the things that were introduced to have that kill finally happen. The movie was pretty scary. I'd actually say it's the scariest Alien movie to date. Not so much because it's like super gory and gross. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think just because it doesn't let up. It just puts the pedal to the metal, which is really, I think, also what makes it seem a little bit like a ride. It's not so scary or gross that I couldn't watch it. And I'm very squeamish, but it was just enough for me to feel that I was getting the fun sci-fi horror experience that I wanted out of it. I was like, but I could still watch the screen. I would say that after the first 20 minutes or so of setup, the 2-hour film just, again, goes nonstop thrills. And I was on the edge of my seat for most of the film. I was kind of hiding my eyes. I was putting my hands on my head. I was almost shouting at the screen because I was so engaged. I was like, oh my God, look out. Oh, is that how? I also, again, as a fan of films and the franchise, and also from a business perspective, I just was like, to watch this movie just do slam dunk after slam dunk. It was just so great to see the craft unfold and the craftsmanship. And you were just like, oh, that's so clever. Oh, you did it well. I guess that's why the third act you're a little bit more forgiving because, that didn't totally work, but at least they went for it, right? So that was cool. I hope be careful in the comments down below. Please don't spoil the third act for anybody. And I would say that also, refreshingly, nobody did anything too stupid in this movie. Like touch something they shouldn't touch. But that actually made the movie even scarier because everyone was trying their best and they still weren't getting out alive. So that was great. And so, yes, the world building. The sets on this are just, and a lot of them seem practical. Really impressive. It has the classic alien tech from the first film that seemed cutting edge in the 1970s, but it still works here. And I think in large part because Alvarez, who directs and co-wrote the film, does a good job of highlighting how Alien, the franchise, is actually more relevant than ever, dealing with corporate greed and negligence. I love this, all in the service of the glorious bottom line. You see, before there was Vought, there was Weyland Yutani, and you see their logo ominously everywhere here. I thought it was so great, with a lot of talk about what's best for the company. And of course, isn't an AI employee the best that the company could ever ask for? Who puts the company above all else, even above themselves? Yet to its credit, Alien Romulus creates a far more complex character than that, with Andy making the conversation even more interesting. Especially, again, as we find ourselves, as I said, hurtling towards our very own AI reality in real life. And so it has that complexity, and it makes the synthetics, I find that the characters interact with them in a very real and relatable way. I really loved it. So I loved Alien Romulus. It was such a pleasant surprise, as the film's advertising campaign has been very poorly advertised. This movie, if people discover it, if word of mouth is strong, it could really blow up in August because it's sleepy summer. People just want to go and have a good time, and this is really a good time. I really, really had a good time. The trailers have been underwhelming, but that means I'm not quite sure how you would advertise this film because they showed so little of it, it allows for you to have so many great surprises when you actually see it. You've seen very little of this film. I'd say if you've just seen the trailers, I can't vouch for behind the scenes videos, but based on just the trailers that they've shown, I think you've probably only seen about less than a quarter of the film, which is phenomenal. So I hope people just roll the dice and go and check it out. Again, this is just a smidge below the original 2 films and introduces one of my favorite synthetics in these universes. I highly recommend that you see it in theaters. You might be like, well, I'll catch it down the line. I guess we'll take it, but you should really try and see it in theaters. It's so cinematic. I saw it on a regular screen, but I'm going to go back and try and see it on a premium screen. But it was great, even on a regular screen. It deserves to be seen on the big screen. And if you're squeamish, again, it's not anything worse than the first 2 Alien films. It's just more creative, and again, nonstop. I'm actually surprised, by the way, that they're not offering it in 3D, because many sequences feel like they're designed for that format. And I think that might have been a missed opportunity. I'd be like, this would be really cool in 3D. Let's do it. I mean, I don't even know. I'm still not into 3D, but I know that some people do you ever watch 3D? I think this is a movie that would do well from repeat viewing. And I think maybe somebody would be like, let's try it in 3D. All right, so that's my non-spoiler review of Alien Romulus. Come back tomorrow, Friday afternoon. It'll go up in the afternoon for my spoiler review, because we have so much to talk about. Until then, share your non-spoiler thoughts down below. Subscribe today so you don't miss that spoiler review and more. And of course, we'll see how the box office is on Sunday on Movie Math. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.